movie kicks off with a nasty heist gone wrong. A gang of criminals storms in, guns blazing, taking down several men one by one without mercy. Once the dust settles, one of them grabs a briefcase, and they make a quick getaway in their car. Now we shift to Harry. He's in his room, looking like a man drowning in his past. Something's clearly eating away at him. As he sits there lost in thought, he gets a letter in the mail. It's from a guy named Henderson, and all it says is, "Nothing to report." Simple, yet it hits Harry hard. He looks even more miserable after reading it. Frustrated, he pulls out a stool from under his bed, and hidden in one of its legs is a dagger. It's obvious. Harry is contemplating ending it all, but just as he's about to go through with it, he stops suddenly. Instead, he moves toward the window and looks outside, where he spots a woman dealing illegal weapons. Later, he drifts into the kitchen, where a woman named Emma is busy cooking. But Harry? He doesn't say a word. He just makes his own food, eats quietly, and ignores her completely. Emma notices but doesn't push. She starts to offer him a cup of tea, but changes her mind at the last second, silently returning to what she was doing. Harry then heads to a local church, where he spends time cleaning up. Afterward, he sits down in one of the pews and dozes off. In his sleep, he's haunted by a terrifying nightmare. He sees a man aiming a gun right at him before pulling the trigger. Harry wakes up in shock, breathing heavily. Clearly, his past still has a tight grip on him. Shaken by the dream, he once again considers ending his life. This time, he climbs to the church's first floor, ready to jump. But just as he's about to step off, a flood of memories hits him. He sees his wife and daughter alive, happy, just living their lives. In this painful flashback, Harry is on the phone while his wife and daughter stand across the street. Out of nowhere, a speeding car slams into them, killing them instantly. Horror-stricken, Harry rushes to them, but it's too late. Then, through his shock and grief, he looks up and sees the men inside the car, the very same criminals from the opening robbery. Before he can do anything, they drive off, leaving him shattered and helpless. This is the moment that sets him on his path of revenge. Back in the present, Harry gets another letter from Henderson, and this time, it's big. Henderson has tracked down the guy who was driving the car that killed Harry's family. Without hesitation, Harry goes to meet him at a cafe. Henderson spills the details. He not only knows who the robbers are, but he also knows where they're hiding. They run shady business out of a tavern. Harry thanks him and heads straight there. At the pub, Harry orders a drink and waits for the perfect time to act. When the bartender steps away, he sneaks toward the back and listens in on the criminals' conversation. He catches just enough to confirm that these are the guys he's looking for. To get even more information, he hides inside their van as they leave. The van stops at an unknown location, and Harry sneaks out just in time to witness something chilling. The gang is forcing a man to execute two others. When he refuses, they kill all three. Harry is frozen in place, horrified. He realizes just how ruthless these men are. Trying not to be noticed, he carefully backs away and hides. Moments later, one of the robbers steps outside, mourning his dead friends. Harry watches in silence, feeling the weight of what he's about to do. But after witnessing such brutality, he knows he can't back out now. Determined, Harry goes home and prepares. He sells his late wife's wedding ring to a jeweler and uses the money to buy a weapon from the arms dealer he spotted earlier. The next day, he receives a package containing a pistol and ammunition. He spends hours practicing, loading the gun, aiming, shooting. Each time he fires, he imagines the faces of the men who took everything from him. After preparing both physically and mentally, Harry tracks down the criminals again. He sneaks into their hideout, looking for their stash. But before he could do much, one of them, Mark, catches him. Harry raises his gun, but his hands shake and he misses his shot. Mark doesn't waste a second and lunges at him. A brutal fight breaks out, with Harry taking several knife wounds to his arm. But even wounded, he fights back. He finally manages to grab his gun and shoots Mark, who falls to the ground in agony. Seizing the moment, Harry presses Mark for information on the rest of the gang. Bleeding and in pain, Mark reveals that they're headed to the countryside for a drug deal. He even writes down the address for Harry. Just as Harry lets his guard down for a second, Mark makes one last attempt to attack. But Harry is quicker. He fires another shot, ending it for good. Before dying, Mark sneers and insults Harry's wife and daughter, using disgusting language. That's the final straw. Overcome with fury, Harry pummels him to death, unleashing all his anger and grief. The moment the fight is over, reality hits Harry hard. He's just taken a life. Guilt creeps in, and for a second he thinks about ending it all. But then he remembers his mission isn't over. His revenge isn't complete. The next morning, he steps into the kitchen and unexpectedly crosses paths with Emma again. This time, they actually talk. Emma opens up about losing her husband, and for a brief moment, there's a shared understanding between them, a silent connection. But before anything can happen, Harry pulls away, apologizes, and walks out. The following day, still feeling awkward about the whole situation, Harry apologizes to Emma again. He then asks for a day off, probably needing time to clear his head before getting back to his revenge mission. Packing up his gear and gun, he heads off to the countryside, determined to finish what he started. As soon as he arrives, he spots a small private plane landing. A guy steps out, flanked by two of the criminals. They pass him a bag full of drugs, and after a quick exchange, the man hops back into the plane and takes off. Harry realizes there's way more going on than he initially thought. With his pulse racing, he loads his gun and moves incautiously. Taking a deep breath, he finally pulls the trigger, taking down both criminals. The gunfire immediately draws out two more men, Mickey and Emil. Amidst the chaos, Emil gets close enough to stab Harry, leaving him in pain. But Harry doesn't hesitate. He fires back, hitting both Mickey and Emil. Things are spiraling fast, and the remaining criminals jump into their van and speed off, leaving Harry behind. As the adrenaline fades, Harry is suddenly overwhelmed by memories of his wife and the life he lost. The grief crashes down on him, and he falls to his knees, lost in sorrow. Just then, one of the men he thought was dead stirs and begins creeping toward him, ready to attack. Snapping back to reality, Harry quickly reacts and shoots him again before he can get any closer. Exhausted and bleeding, he heads home to tend to his wounds. At a local medical shop, Harry meets a doctor who helps stitch him up and gives him antibiotics to prevent infection. Meanwhile, Mickey and Emil return to the scene of the shootout, only to find their crew wiped out. They're furious and head back to the city, trying to make sense of everything. While discussing the situation, they come across a receipt from a jewelry store with Harry's name and address on it. They decide to hunt him down. The two thugs head to the jewelry store and pressure the shopkeeper into giving up information about Harry. Back at work, Harry runs into Emma, who excitedly tells him she's going on a vacation for her birthday and invites him to join. She gives him the address, which momentarily distracts Harry from his troubles. But before he can even think about relaxing, Mickey and Emil show up. As Emma is leaving, the two men confront Harry, guns aimed straight at him. In a desperate move, Harry bites Emil's arm and makes a run for his room, grabbing his gun. Before he can react, Emil catches up and beats him badly before tossing him off the first floor. Miraculously, Harry survives the fall and escapes, trapping the two criminals inside the church. As they ransack his place for clues, they come across a letter from Henderson, potentially leading them straight to Harry's next move. Desperate for help, Harry tries calling Henderson, but he can't get through. Meanwhile, Emil and Mickey aren't taking chances. They track down Henderson, douse him in gasoline, and demand to know where Harry is. Henderson, staying loyal, refuses to talk. Without hesitation, the two criminals shoot him, killing him instantly. With nowhere else to go, Harry heads to his childhood home, where his sister Christy patches him up. She tells him to go to a hospital, but he refuses. He insists that he's taken care of most of the people responsible and just needs to be alone for a few days. After she leaves, Harry visits his wife and daughter's graves. There he meets his father and fills him in on everything. His father hands him a gun and some bullets, warning him to be prepared. Knowing the final showdown is coming, Harry suits up, loads his gun, and gets ready for whatever is coming his way. Mickey and Emil, now joined by another man, are actively searching for him. They search his house, but come up empty. Eventually, they head to the barn, while Emil stays behind. Sitting alone, Emil notices blood dripping from his nose and, turning around, sees Harry standing there, gun in hand. Before Emil can react, Harry shoots him once. When Emil reaches for his gun, Harry fires again, finishing him off. Harry then moves to the barn, where he finds Mickey. A brutal fight breaks out, and in the struggle, Harry drops his gun. Reaching for a knife, he manages to stab Mickey. As Mickey stumbles away, a nearby can of gasoline spills everywhere. Seeing his chance, Harry shoves Mickey into the flames, watching as the fire engulfs him. Just as he thinks it's all over, another man appears, gun pointed at him. Harry, exhausted, tells him it's done and that he should just leave. The man hesitates before deciding to walk away. With everything finally behind him, Harry heads home and listens to some music, allowing himself a moment of peace. A wave of memories floods back. His wife, his daughter, everything he lost. Overcome with emotion, he visits their graves one last time, collapsing in grief. The scene shifts to a beach where Emma waits, expecting Harry to join her. And finally he does. For the first time in a long time, he lets himself feel a moment of happiness. Thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more recaps. Until next time, take care.